I request Mr. Ketan Upadhyay, team member of the organizing team of today's seminar, to present the CD to Shri Rakesh Shankar ji. This CD contains the e-book and audiobook of Minor Hints. I now request Dr. Pragnesh Shah to take over the session.
Number of speakers have shared their views. In this session, we are going to discuss about governance. And when it comes to governance, it is not only the planning or organizing or putting something in practice, but it directly related to our culture, work culture, thinking process, and social culture. So when we think about governance, we think about social change, then definitely that is the responsibility of youth. But whatever efforts they had to put, all seniors have already put, and what we are today is their outcome. So if we do want to something which is different, then it is a responsibility of youth, youngsters, to carry, to shoulder this change. And that's why today on this governance issue, we have with us youngsters, dynamic personality, very young Shri Rakesh Shankar ji. He is DDO of Baroda district. He started his career from Manipur. He has worked as SDM and ADM, also worked as Joint Secretary of Chief Minister of Tripura, and he has also worked as Urban Development Joint Secretary in Tripura government. He has also worked with educational institution as Chief Executive Officer of Tripura Medical College and DDO of Mehsana, Gujarat. Today, he is working, holding office of DDO, Baroda district. So now I invite Shri Rakesh Shankar ji for this session on governance.
Namaskar. On this, in this August halls of this university, this August University, first of all I want to pay my tributes to Maharaja Sayajirao Gaikwad III on the occasion of his 150th birth anniversary. The legacy still lives. We are still thinking about the legacy that he has left, and in whatever small way I as a government servant can add to this mammoth legacy, or can perceive in my own way as to what part of that legacy or what part of that governance is relevant today, I will try. This is broadly based on the book written, which is a compilation rather of the lectures by Raja Sir T. Madhva Rao, The Minor Hints. The name of the book is very, very deceiving. These are actually major works, it's a major work, but it's named as Minor Hint. It's a very understated kind of publication, and because of this lecture, I had a chance to read this book. It's a fascinating experience. I think I should have read this book much earlier. I would have been a better administrator had I done that. At the same time, I want to thank MS University. I want to thank Shri Jigar Bhai, who is the coordinator of Yugantar and who is the syndicate member, as well as there were two people very active, Nehali and Pachigar, who had come to invite me. They were very active. I'm sorry if I misspelled the surnames. I think it's not raining very hard, but people are pursuing it's raining very hard. There's less presence in the hall. And no great movies around also. I mean, Batman was last week. क्या super cool है हम? Okay, so movies rule over governance, right? Fair enough. Yeah, I think let's go by the slide. When I went through this book, now we are just going to have a cursory look on what this book talked about. I'm sure that bulk of the audience here would have read this book, because if I've been given to understand that this is a political science discourse, and I think most of the students are connected to political science. Could I know how many students are connected to political science? All right. From other streams like mathematics or fantastic, physics or pure sciences? Yeah, so it's a very mix. We have a good mix of audience here. That means good. Engineering as well. Oh, commerce. I'm sorry. Engineering. Fantastic. That's nice. Yeah. I don't know where to find mechanics here. So, okay. Doesn't matter. So what we're going to do here is, we're just going to take a brief overview of this book. This is a fantastic book. I would recommend it to you. And it's not because I've been given an opportunity to lecture on it or give a speech on it. When I went through the content, it's a good content. It's a quality content. Very readable, very simple, easy to grasp. And what we say is common sense. Good common sense in administration. Easy to grasp, not loaded with jargons. The first thing that he emphasizes is that whatever you do, whatever decisions that you take, please make sure that these decisions, they lead to happiness of your people. That is the only guiding principle he is talking about, the happiness. And it's very simple, isn't it? It's like a mother who is looking after her children. Every decision that she takes in her wisdom, I mean, that wisdom can change from point A to point B to point C. Fair enough. But she is trying to reconcile it with the fact that it has to be happiness of the child. Similarly, the state, now I'm talking about 1850s, please remember. I'm not talking about a very current organization. I'm not talking about current governments. So he says that this is the guiding principle. This is the ultimate goal. For that, he lays out a framework. So once he makes this the heart of this argument, he says that then everything else that you do, every structure that you do, every decision that you make, that becomes a tool to achieve this particular goal. As simple as that, isn't it? It's not very, very difficult to understand this. For which he says, yes, you ought to have a code of conduct. A code of conduct of a Raja. Now please remember, before we had a freedom, and please remember when our states were ruled by monarchs or by kings, they were very, very strong centralized systems. They had strong powers vested in them. So for him to say that you have to be guided by a particular principle of code of conduct, which meant that neutrality, secularism, non-partiality, nepotism. What is nepotism? Just because you have some relatives, don't benefit them. And so on and so forth. He also says that when you are going to be a king, you're going to have some people who are always going to be around you, trying to advise you of certain things. Obviously, you can't run a state alone. You are going to have a set of people who are going to impress upon you what they think, how, or report to you what things are going on. So he was always trying to impress upon him, be very careful of who you select as your advisors, whom you keep your company with. Because if you keep your company with wrong people, your state may suffer. At the same time, he says that because you are a Raja and you have a certain lifestyle, He always tells him, strike a balance between opulence when you are doing your expenditure. You have to have that pomp, but that pomp should not be so strong that it erodes your treasury. One thing that he keeps on reminding the Raja at that particular time, 150 years back, was the kind of environment that this particular state was in. You had the Britishers who were very, very strong at that time. Britishers who were always laying down the guiding principles by which the princely states ought to run themselves. And he always was telling him that, look, if we fail in running a good government, we will be giving an excuse to the Britishers to enforce their rule directly upon us. So unless we have the moral authority by saying that we are running our show properly, we are running our state properly, only then can we keep them at bay, for which he cites certain examples. Then let's talk about the law and customs. Again, the guiding principle is happiness of the people. The law should not be very, very coercive. The law should think more of good. He says that there are certain customs that has to be respected, but he always says with a word of caution, let secularism prevail. This is very important. Please understand, I'm not talking about, current times, recent times. I'm talking about this document which is hundreds of years back, written hundreds of years back. Then he talks about law and order. He says that we need to develop a system where our people feel protected, where if there is hooliganism, where if there is a strong group or thuggism or criminal activity, it has to be quashed. And then he dwells upon how to build that system. So that you can go in detail. Then he talks about, next slide please, that you need to build a military to protect your area, your jurisdiction, should have a judiciary. Now here he dwells beautifully. He says that, now we've all seen, when we read about the Mughal Empire, we used to hear that the Raja is the sole dispenser of justice, and I think in one of the Mughal cases, we had those systems where you could ring the bell. Jahangir, yeah. And there was also this concept of Jharoka Darshan. And justice was swift. But justice was not, there was no clear system of judiciary. What he is saying is that the Raja should not dispense the justice by himself. He says that, what if your decision is not liked? What if you are very harsh? But what if you are very just? So there are chances that people might be aggrieved. So he said, instead, have a very good system, a just system of judicial officers, and then have systems of appeal. So if somebody comes and tells you that this particular judge has been too harsh, you can always say, please go on appeal. You have a next level. Pay them good salaries. See that the system works fine. Don't deliver the justice yourself. Now this was a hint towards separation of powers. Absolutely. It was not a very clear demarcation, but yes, it moved towards that direction. It was a smart thing to do. And then as usual, lot of emphasis on public health, education, even at exorbitant cost to the treasury. And yes, he's also dwelled upon the public service, wherein he says that public service, a paid public service, comparable to what the British government employed, to the salaries what the British government employs, you should employ. Let this service be impartial, let this service be honest, and also have the standard code of conduct rules applicable on this service so that they could deliver the jobs. He also said, have very, very clear rules for delegation of powers to this public service. For instance, you say that he is the head of department of X, so those powers have to be very, very clearly delegated to that particular authority. This is what he's talked about. As far as governance is concerned, to build a complete governance system. But minor hints is not only about this. Minor hints, if I'm not wrong, talks about three facets. One is personal conduct, one is how you run your government, and what is the third facet? Absolutely, the political management. So, I'm just talking about one facet of how he thought or how he envisaged that once you go about doing things in this way, you're safe, you're secure. Let's come back to now the present system. Next. Yeah. Now, roughly, when you talk about governance, what does it mean? Governance is very simple. Governance means government in action. And what do you say when you say, what do you mean when you say that government is in action? You mean to say the decisions that are being taken by the government. Or sometimes we put our hands in despair and say, "Arey, no decisions are being taken, so there is no governance. ये रास्ता इतने दिनों से टूटा पड़ा है, nobody is looking at it, so there is no decision." So you say there is no governance. So there are different perceptions, right from the local level to the state level to the national level. If your diesel prices increase, if your petrol prices increase, you say, doesn't make sense. You know, we crib about governance. And as the lady students here get married, and when the gold prices go up, they're going to say there's no governance. Okay, lighter vein. Now, when we talk about this governance, and when I say, let us say that we come out with an act and we say, we are not going to allow you to see Kya Super Cool Hai Hum or Batman. So I'm going to say that you can't go out and see movies. I'm taking a very, very simple example. Very simple example. Can I do it? Can we do it? Can the government do it? Can the government do it? Okay, so whatever decisions that we have to take, please remember when we draw upon minor hints, we say that it has to be the happiness of the people. But when we draw upon our current state and the decisions that we take, we have to be guided by the Constitution of India. Every decision, every act in government has to be guided by the Constitution of India. As is applicable on the government, the Constitution of India is also applicable on the citizens. So it's a supreme document that we have. And there is a strong thought process that has gone into making of it. If you read the debates that had happened in the Constituent Assembly while we were drafting this document, there were attempts to change the Constitution, to amend the Constitution. Now, there are some students from political science. We can amend our Constitution under Article 368. Now, let us say there is an ex-government which has a majority in the parliament. All you require is a 2/3 majority, absolute majority, to amend the Constitution. Who stops you? Who stops you from saying that you don't have any right to occupation? That you can't do this occupation, though it may be guaranteed by you in fundamental rights. What stops you? So this is very, very important. This piece of information that I'm going to give you. There were two landmark judgments, one in Golaknath case and one in Kesavananda Bharati case, which was fought in the Supreme Court. And in both these cases, we had the constitutional bench. Now what they said, that constitution consists of basic features. Very, very strong basic features. You can amend the constitution. Constitution has to keep up with the times. Why? Because in 1947, the problems that you had, as years go by, we will not have those problems. So you have to update your constitution, fair enough. But you can't change the constitution, you can't change the basic features. So what are the basic features? Yeah, I mean, we don't need to read this. You know, we need to feel the pulse. We are all citizens, isn't it? We need to understand that this is anything that is questioning the individual liberty, freedom of expression, thought, isn't it? That's the fiber that runs in the Constitution that cannot be changed. So you can amend the Constitution, fair enough. It requires to be updated, but you can't change the basic feature of the Constitution unless you have a bench which is larger than the 13th bench of the Constitution bench which was sitting in Kesavananda Bharti case and then which rules otherwise. And we call this power judicial review. So in essence, the Supreme Court is the interpreter of our Constitution, which keeps the decisions that we take in check. Now, acts passed in the Parliament and the state legislature, we have acts when a bill is placed, when it is passed by a simple majority in the Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, and then again in the state legislature, and then endorsed by the president or the governor, we call it a act. That then becomes the guiding principle for laying down governance. For instance, the RTI Act 2005 or the Prevention of Corruption Act 1988, right? Now, we also have so many government orders which the executive does. I can't go to the legislature, I can't go to the parliament again and again and say that, okay, I need to do this, pass me an act. The executive has to function. So the executive is vested upon those powers by which it passes government orders to run the show, which is in the broad framework of the Constitution and the acts made by the government. Please understand, I can't make a government order which can contravene or which will contravene to the Constitution. And therefore I say that there are many people who challenge orders. Sometimes it questions individual liberty, sometimes there are contract laws, sometimes there are individual rights. For instance, if a police picks up somebody and says that I want to question you, I've got an information, and if there is no clear act on that, and then detains you in custody in the night, can they do it? Can just anybody be picked up and said that, okay, I want to detain you, I want to ask a question to you? Now, what is the writ in the Supreme Court with the power the Supreme Court and the High Court has? The habeas corpus. Unless the magistrate approves, you can't just pick up anybody. Please understand. These are the safeguards for our liberty. So government orders or government functioning has to compulsorily have the general tenet of the above two things as well as the welfare of this country. Case laws. So many times it has happened that decisions that government has taken people have questioned that decision, either in an individual case or filed a public interest litigation, and that has become a case law. So if you meet some lawyers, if you do your study on the internet, or if you lay your hands upon compendiums of the decisions that Supreme Court and High Court has given, you'll find that, okay, there is a gray area on land, on a particular subject. Supreme Court or High Court would have given their judgments in that particular area. And when we are in a fix, we refer to those judgments. So those case laws, they also help us to take a decision. So that's very important, because please understand, we are saying governance is decision. And how does that decision come? We are talking about that. Next. Next. Yeah, so these are the broad four where we thought we draw the legitimacy of the decision making from. Now this is the perspectives we have of how we make the decisions. Now, please understand, we are talking about some macro decisions. There are a lot of micro decisions that you see daily. If you are living in a city, your road is being, if somebody is digging your road, if the local corporation is digging your road, if the drainage line is going around, so that's a local governance decision. I'm not talking about that. I'll come to that later. I'll come to that when I'm talking about reforms. But as of now, when I'm talking as a country as a whole, when you're laying down governance structures, how do we do it? The Planning Commission of India. Now, can somebody tell me whether the Planning Commission of India is a constitutional body or not? Can somebody tell it to me emphatically? I mean, your whispers apart. It is not even a legislative body. Excellent. There is a resolution that has been passed for it. So it was evolved, it started during the time of Shri Jawaharlal Nehru. Now, Planning Commission of India, you have the Prime Minister who is the chairman of this body. It is a group of thinkers who come out with 5-year plans. We have just finished our 11th 5-year plan. Our preparation for the 12th 5-year plan is on. I was trying to look at the document. I don't have it. I have not got the document from the website. But that document is being prepared. Now, what this 5-year planning does is, it identifies areas where work is required. Let's say we require more investments in health or public health. Or let's say we require more investments in education. Or let's say we require more investments in electricity. We need a flag post. We need some statistical evidence. We need some comparative documents. We need some international studies to back, because we are going to commit thousands of crores and crores of our taxpayers' money year on to this particular development process and legitimize it by acts and government orders. We just can't say that, okay, increase the health spending by 1% of the GDP. The amount is staggering. Or we can't say that increase 5% in electricity or roads. We need to have a statistical evidence for that. Please understand, in the first 5-year plan, what was that plan called? First, second, can somebody tell me? This planning thing was very, very interesting. Was there something called the Nehru-Mahlanobis plan? The Mahlanobis plan? The second 5-year plan, yes. This gentleman was a Russian. We had adopted the thought of socialist democracy, and therefore we made huge ivory towers, where people said that they were ivory towers, the huge PSUs, the nationalized bodies. They were the product of planning that was made in those years. Then we have the Finance Commission of India. Now the job of the Finance Commission of India is very, very simple. It says that, okay, the state government collects X taxes, the union government collects Y taxes. How do we distribute these taxes so that you can run the government for the welfare of the people? Then drafting a bill and passing an act. Whenever a bill is drafted, please understand, unlike the American system, which when I was reading some literature on that, there's a lot of public debate in universities, in community halls, and whoever is putting the bill has to generally convince the citizenry, invite a lot of questions, be very open and be very, very clear on what he's putting it in the bill. In India, we have yet to have that kind of process, but yes, we have a process of committees. We have many committees which look after this bill, give their suggestions before it is passed and becomes an act. Some of the important bills are also getting a lot of media attention. Civil societies. And then they act upon the government, they act upon the political party in power to bring the requisite changes. Again, the documents like budget, it's a fantastic document if you were to read the budget, the annual financial statement, but the annual financial statement is a product of the Economic Survey of India. Now, if you read this Economic Survey of India, it's a document of how the government has performed financially, how the various decisions of the government has led to changes in the economy, and the NSSO makes some crucial survey. For instance, our entire work on welfare is based on what? Now let us say I have 100 rupees. Now I have population to cater which requires 200 rupees, right? But I have 100 rupees. Now how am I going to allocate that 100 rupees? It's a very simple question. I am saying I have 100 rupees because we don't have unlimited resources. I just can't go around printing currency because it's going to raise the inflation. You see, isn't it? I mean, I can't keep my printers working overnight and say, please keep printing and take the inflation on. No. So how am I going to allocate it? The NSSO helps us. We do some surveys, which we call poverty surveys. We call it socio-economic surveys, where we say X number of people are poor, and we would say that these are the conditions of inclusion and exclusion, where we would say that these are poor if they are a part of these conditions, and these are not poor, which we call above poverty line. Now what is this? This helps you in allocating resources, because your subsidies, your PDS system, welfare policies, housing policies, taxation systems, they all are guided by the allocation of resources, which is guided by this survey, which is very, very crucial. Right? Then we have international exchanges, experiences, and organizations which help us to take certain decisions. Now tell me, can somebody tell me, we have an enlightened group here, and afternoon nap always enlightens people. It has been told to improve productivity by 20 to 30%, but let the nap be short. I hope people didn't, I mean, it was a joke. You are supposed to laugh. I don't have anybody here to, to go on. Okay, can somebody tell me the Right to Information Act, where was the precursor of this act? Which country did we adopt this act from? A chocolate to a person who answers this. Anybody? Come on, huh? I mean, chocolate by Amit Bhai. He is the sponsorer. Switzerland. Okay. I mean, I do not want to get the name of those countries where you intend to go. I want the names of those countries where you believe that this act was passed. It was United States of America. It was United States of America. US. Now there's one more type of organization which is coming, which we are adopting from the developed countries. Can somebody help me with what are the kind of organizations, what are the kind of public structure which is something new, something alien to this country, which is spawning in the last 10 years? Yeah, that was a very difficult syntax which I said. Anyway, can you tell me, name some organization or where we are inspired from? We are building some new structures. We did not envisage these structures when we started off building this country. But the growth of liberalization and privatization has made it mandatory that we build such kind of structures, and their numbers are increasing. Their role is important. One, right? Sorry?
Like the Europe, unified Europe,
The Euro kind of thing?
have their own free trade association,
The FTAs, okay, the free trade agreements.
CFO, and everything, South Asian,
Yeah.
whatever it's called.
Yeah.
South Asian free trade.
Got the idea. Similar. So you're talking about the free trade agreements. Anybody else? The CCI. Anybody else? Okay. Public participation. Good. Yeah. You hit it bang on. It is CCI. FTA is there, but more proper would be the CCI. The CCI is a kind of a body which is like SEBI, which is like TRI, which is like IRDA. This is a regulatory body. Why is regulation required? The activities which was in yesteryears performed by the government is now being performed by the private sector. Now, please understand, unlike the government, the private sector is ruled by balance sheet. It is ruled by a very strong profit motive. And unless you regulate that, unless you control that, the citizenry at large are going to suffer. I'm going to give you a very small example. And it's a thought. I call it the public choice theory. I am forgetting the name of the proponent. It's a fantastic theory which is very, very important for a country like ours. Why is the cost of telecom or mobile telephony in India so low? That's one, right? Vast spread that would make infrastructure so difficult, that would raise the costs. The number of customer base. Okay, any other thoughts? Okay, what stops from these private fellows cartelling, to become a cartel and operate and hike prices and share profits, demarcate areas, enjoy the public money? What's stopping them? How can you find out that there is a cartel? How many companies operate in the telecom sector? It's a thought, okay? I'm throwing a thought to you. What I might be saying might not exactly be the bullseye. It's a thought. What stops from Vodafone and Tata, Airtel and Aircel, there are 6-7 operators, to have a dinner in Taj and then decide, slowly 1 month you do it, 2nd month I'll do it, 3rd month you do it. What's the big deal? I mean, It's a private entrepreneur. May not be very easy to detect it also. They can always say our expenditures are crossing way high, our license fee is increasing, we have more auctions to face now, thanks to 2G. So, according to me, the logic is, and that is what we call the public choice theory, is because BSNL and MTNL is operating in the same space. What they ensure is, when BSNL and MTNL operate, they are driven by the public good. They are driven by saying that, look, I am more concerned that the citizenry of this country should have access to telecom with reasonable prices. Now, just because Vodafone increases their prices, you wouldn't have BSNL doing that. Or you wouldn't have MTNL doing that. Got the point? So that is the ultimate check. Now, if you go to Delhi, how many of you have been to Delhi? Sizable number. What was the mode of transport you took there? Metro. Has anybody tried the Blue Line? The Blue Line buses? The brave people of Blue who have tried the Blue Line buses. It's like traveling in the local trains of Bombay. Yeah. Now what stops the Blue Line buses in Delhi from raising their prices? The Delhi Transport Corporation, they run their buses. Right? Now, if tomorrow the Blue Line buses say that, look, our fuel costs are increasing, our CNG is costing us higher, we can't do this, we can't run the show, the government will always say we can run the show. We call this the public choice theory. Give people a choice. Give people a choice. Let them take the choice. But in some of the sectors, the government has to operate like the public health. The government never exits the health sector. It never shuts down its hospitals. It says, fair enough, you have a choice to go to the private sector hospitals, but you also have a choice to come to us. And we want to continuously improve upon that. So, that is about the exchanges, the experiences, the organizations that we talk about. Now, innovations by administrative thought leaders. There are some certain structures, and when I say administrative thought leaders, it does not mean only the bureaucrats. No, I'm also saying the political thought leaders. I'm saying administrative thought leaders. I'm saying the politicians as well as some bureaucrats. The cooperative system. When this milk revolution happened in this country, Mr. Kurian, to a large extent, was responsible for it. It's an amazing system. I am witness to the fact that it has revolutionized the incomes of so many families. GIDC is a system. It's a thought that let us create an area where you as an entrepreneur can come in and say, look, I want the land here for lease for 99 years, I want to do business here. Please provide me with necessary clearances, electricity, drainage, etc., etc. It's a thought which has worked fantastic for Gujarat. Electricity boards. Has somebody heard about Wasmo? Okay, these are community systems developed in the villages where villages themselves run the distribution of water. And it has been appreciated like anything. The Pani Panchayat, fantastic. It's a fantastic experience. This is where we want our systems to go. We want our systems to be led by community, driven by community, run by community. So there are several examples where innovation can bring change in governance or good governance. Next. Yeah. The civil society brings in a lot of thought process. The civil society says, this is important, that is important, this needs to change. current boiling example is the Lokman. I'll not go in deep because you are getting your barrage of verbal assuage or verbal everything on the media every day, so I'll not go in deep there. The media. This is the fourth pillar. Now, the discussions that happen on the media has become very, very potent now. Those days of Doordarshan, where you had limited viewership, limited reach, and limited arguments, has now been suddenly, I mean, India's media is very, very vibrant. But apart from ascribing any other quality to the word vibrant, as a citizen, I appreciate the kind of vibrancy media has, the kind of issues they raise. At the end of the day, I am a citizen. We are a part of this country, though I am a part of a system. And some of the issues that they take up, those are issues that we really want the media to take up for the betterment of this country. They really add a bold touch to it. Nothing wrong with that. I remember 3 days back, there was a story on irrigation. There was a story on irrigation on Times Now, wherein they had a simple assessment. They said, if you spend 26,000 crores building irrigation network in your state, and now you can picture the irrigation coverage by a satellite imagery. Please understand, if you were to check the green cover, or if you were to check the spread of the water, the command area, you can easily do it by a satellite mapping. After spending 26,000 crores, if I am not wrong, correct my figures, I think Maharashtra's extent of the command area increased only by 1%. And they had the courage to ask that question. Great going. 26,000 crore is not a small amount. So, the debates, the discussions, I think they do good for the society. The PIL, again, one very important decision I can attribute to PIL. Can somebody tell me? It also has a recently also a decision like this was taken by the Gujarat High Court, but I'm not referring to that, I'm referring to a decision by the Delhi High Court. It was regarding the CNG. It was regarding the CNG. And if you go to Delhi now, you will find it less polluted. You see, the dissolved particles in the air, they have gone down. So that is thanks to the PIL, the public interest litigation. Of course, there is a very thin line of PIL and judicial activism so as to overstep. But yes, and then the case laws we have already seen. Next. Okay. Now, if we were to draw parallels with the minor hints, because we already discussed upon the minor hints, with the current scenario, so we would say yes, we stress upon law and order. We have a definite penal code. We have a definite procedure for how we do administer justice. That is the IPC and the CRPC. We have a military. We have a professional and a career bureaucracy, the public service, the judiciary, health and education, apart from several other welfare activities. So what I'm trying to say is minor hints is still relevant. It's a document which has not gone down with age. To a certain extent, it's still relevant. Next. Now, as and how, since 1947, we have come a long way. And at various junctures, there has been requirement to take strong decisions. I'm sure that you would understand that in the 1990s, there was a case for making a strong decision. Can somebody help me with that? Sorry?
Economic reforms.
Yeah. Sir, please give.
Economic reforms.
No, sir, please give them the opportunity. You are so knowledgeable. I want to hear it from the youngsters. That's why we always say that we are guided by our elders. So thank you. But apart from what sir said, can somebody else help me with this particular period? The years, the situation, the complexity. Okay. Okay. In 1991, India did not have enough reserves with it. Our reserves was depleting. Our foreign exchange was depleting. We had to actually pledge our gold with international agencies to get money to run this country. And that's when the World Bank, it came out with a term called good governance. Now what is good governance? What World Bank says is that fair enough, we will help you. We will bail you out. But we'll do it with certain conditionalities. So it was a conditional aid. It was laced with disincentive and incentive. And that set of suggestions, which they call fiscal and monetary reforms, structural reforms, is referred to as good governance. The structural reforms that we did was, we privatized a lot of our PSUs, which were loss making. We said, it's not the government's business to be in business. We also said, let's keep our fiscal deficit in check. Let's not spend more than what you can earn. Cut your recruitment. Be lean. Be thin government. Be a lean and thin and a professionally be a professional setup. This is what we called as good governance. We said, don't think about import substitution. Please understand. Till 1991, what is import substitution? What is the policy of import substitution? Can somebody help me with that?
Producing the goods which were जो पहले goods import हम करते थे वो colonial.
Yes, हमारी सोच पहले ये थी कि जो गुड्स हमें इंडिया में जरूरत है हम बाहर से नहीं मंगाएंगे, भले वो सस्ती कीमत में हो, लेकिन हम इंडिया में बनाएंगे. उसको हम इंपोर्ट सब्स्टिट्यूशन कहते थे और जिससे बहुत सारी मोनोपोलीज भी पैदा हुई थी, लाइसेंस राज पैदा हुआ था. So they said कि open up your economy, let FDI come in. So they demarcated areas that except for these particular areas, you can have FDI in the rest of the areas. So these were structural. So we in short we call it LPG. Liberalization, privatization, globalization. So this was good governance. India's taste of good governance happened in 1991. In short, it meant efficient and effective government. Now what is the difference between efficiency and effectiveness? That is efficiency. What is effectiveness?
When the decision is taken so that maximum help, maximum gain, maximum output or
Fair enough, but any examples you have?
The difference between the Kachni and Karni. It is Kachni is the efficiency and Karni is the effectiveness.
Sir,
Efficiency is doing the things right way and effectiveness is doing the right things.
okay. Okay, I'm trying to bring out an example of how we can, but in an essence, I think what you have told is right. Efficiency, we all know, is to do things very fast, to reduce our turnaround time. And effectiveness would mean that what you are doing, whether it is really helping your cause. Now let's say we make self-help groups and we say we give microfinance to the self-help groups and we churn out microfinance to 1 lakh groups. We are very, very efficient with that. But let's say we have not trained these groups. They don't know how to elevate themselves above the poverty levels. So we might not be effective. So good governance, in a sense, has efficiency as well as effectiveness. Now, when you're dealing with macro indicators and when you're dealing at huge levels, I'll just give you a simple example. In Vadodara district alone, the district panchayat runs 2,300 schools, which means that we are looking at 2,25,000 children. When we talk about PHCs, we have 80 PHCs. We have 150 doctors. When we talk about Anganwadis, we have 2,300 Anganwadis with 4,500 Anganwadi workers catering to somewhere around 2 to 3 lakh children. So there, any mistake, you might be efficient, but any mistake in your focus group, your policy can impact effectiveness. So public policy and good governance is about understanding that. Again, as I said, economy. If your economy is in doldrums, you require decision making. You require governance to be felt. You can't have a latent attitude, so that's where reforms coming. Now what I'm talking here is about why reforms is required. Again, welfare of the masses. If you look at this length and breadth of this country, if you open the map of this country, and then try to pan out the income levels of people staying in different areas, say Gujarat, Maharashtra, Jharkhand, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Northeast, say Jammu Kashmir, Madhya Pradesh, don't you find that geography has a lot of impact on the income levels of your masses? So welfare of masses. We are one of the most populous state of this world. State in the sense, the nation state, the country. I am not only talking about Gujarat alone. So what are the decisions that we are taking for the welfare of masses? Or why is the Naxalite movement, the Red Corridor? How many people know about the Red Corridor? Yeah? The gentleman there?
Red corridor is an area of the people who are residing in eastern India and parts of central India who are taken up arms against the government for certain demands. It started from a village called Maxwell, which was in
Bangladesh. West Bengal. Yeah. So now when we are talking about policies, governance, it also means your entire geography. Please understand the length of breadth of this country is huge. It's not an easy task. Then we talk about the electoral reforms again. Now there are 2 or 3 fantastic suggestions that came in electoral reforms. Before I share what I have in mind, I'm sure that you would have read about electoral reforms too. Because this is a fantastic subject to be in, because this has democracy at its heart. This is at the root of how we are going to be run. Can somebody help me? Yeah, fantastic. Right to reject. Okay. I don't know how right to reject will help. I really don't know. If you look at the math, I don't know. Anything, anybody else?
Some kind of eligibility for candidates who want to.
But wouldn't that go against the basic tenet of
Yeah, true, but,
the Constitution?
but then too, if we want some kind of reforms, then we have to compromise at some stage.
Then are we trying to say that there are no white collar crimes in this India? Or blue collar crimes in this country? I think they are much more smarter than the crimes. Please, I'm not hinting towards, these are minor hint. And the larger your knowledge, the larger the possibility of, committing bigger crimes. See, the right to recall is a fantastic thing, which is actually operating in Switzerland.
We should keep an indemnity clause in such a way that it could keep a check on the promises of the persons who are taking, and if they don't complete the promises, there should be a clause to indemnify them to fulfill those promises.
We have a committee of assurances. People who are experts here, they know that there is a committee on assurances which keep track of the promises that you make in the legislature, the government promises that they do. But we say that when you say that you are accountable, we say that look, if you don't perform, we don't bring you to power after some time. It is as simple as that. The problem with this, with one of the electoral system I found is, and I'm sure some of you would agree with me, the first past the post system has, whosoever is the first in the race wins. Please understand, what is the first past the post system? Let's say if there are 100 voters and there are only 20 who go to the election on the election day to exercise the franchisee, and there are 4 parties and you get 6 votes. Now 6% of your votes and you can run the show. In bigger states, in some of the states, 13 to 20% of the electorate vote is what you get, and you run the government. Now how does that impact our policies? Can somebody tell me? Now, this is very, very important.
I have a correction. The policies are mostly made and implemented by the bureaucracy. So whoever comes to the power, if the bureaucracy is strong, I don't think that person, whoever is in the form with 6% of the vote, can actually cause any problem or something. If the bureaucracy is strong enough.
The bureaucracy plays an advisory role and a role of implementation because I'm a part of that system. But if you remember and if you see the processes of election, you see that every party has a manifesto which they declare before the election, and they say that I'm going to do A, B, C, D, Z, on which they run the election, and they say that if I come to power, I'm going to implement this. Now, we guide, we try to implement, we assist. But the bureaucracy does not. The act is passed by the legislature, by the elected representatives. Now, what I am trying to say is, let us say you have a population of 10 crores, and you go with 20% of the votes, you run the state. In essence, you have a mandate of how many people? 2 crores. And you are making decision for how many people? How many people? More than 10 crore or 10 crore? But you know who has voted for you and who has not voted for you. I think we all understand this here, the seasoned people. I'll give a small example. You'll immediately understand what I'm saying. Let's take the local elections of your corporation. You have a house where you have an extension of a gutter line or a water connection, and you vote to a particular corporator who does not come to power, to a candidate who does not come to power, and the other guy comes to power. You might have your water connection cut. Please understand what I'm trying to say. That I'm not sure. So, how are policies being made? It is being made with the knowledge to a certain extent, except for few governments, mature governments, where thought processes are very good. The impartial clause is there, the welfare of masses is there. They don't look at this. But in hearts and hearts, you know who has voted for you. And because we are a multi-party democracy, and the size of voters who could get you in power has shrunk, your policies might target you to the small minority. How do you check that? Now, there was a fantastic legislation that came in Gujarat some months back, rather a year back, and I liked the legislation very much. In my own circles, there was a bit of resistance that how are you going to implement this, but I was ready. I said, I'm ready. This is a good piece of legislation we have. What's wrong with it? Can somebody tell me what was that legislation? Absolutely. If we are going to go out and say that 40% of our people, 50% of our people are going to go out and vote, then how are we going to get policies that impact maximum number of people? So we have to go out in numbers so that whichever political party forms the government, they know that the policies have to be made in mass, for the mass, because the mass is behind making me victorious. And therefore the compulsory voting. It was a beautiful piece of legislation. I still remember, and you all know the statistics, when 26/11 happened, and there was voting after that in South Mumbai, what was the turnout of the of the people? They were crying foul when this attack happened. You know how South Mumbai is, it's one of the poshest area of Mumbai. What was the turnout? 45%. And the lady who stood from the corporate sector, who said that I'll bring in some change, she lost. She lost her deposit. This is one of the most, because in mature democracies you have people going out and voting. But here we are with abysmal 50%, 60%. Then how are we going to change the polity? How are we going to help the system make policies which impact a lot of people? So I think that's one of the most important electoral reforms that we should think about. And then the judicial reforms, we know that swift disposal of cases, etc. Next, and the last slide. So this is what I would say, that whatever decision that we do, this is the environment we are making the decision in: the constitution, media, welfare, PIL, political manifesto, economy, code of conduct, and the international scenario. Next. Thank you. Any questions if you have? Please introduce.
Along with this compulsory voting, we should also. Yeah, sir, my name is Vinay. I am from Department of Geology, Science Faculty. And so my question is, along with the compulsory voting, we should also provide one of the options as none of the above. If party A is in election, party B is in election, we don't find any of them in the proper one. We should also provide one option which is none of the above.
I have not been able to understand this none of the above thing. What it may help to do is, it may try to send the message that please put up better candidates and have a second round of elections. But I believe those none of the above will be treated as no votes. No votes. You know, so say you have 100 votes, but you can't have 100 none of the aboves. So what is the system that you have to do to make sure that these candidates don't come to the political fray? What is the math you are going to work out there? We are not sure. There's a lot of math involved there. Are we then trying to say that, okay, let's say we have 100 voters, and if 51 voters say none of the above, we say that, okay, we rule out this round of voting? So there is a math involved there. There's a lot of math involved there. So there has to be some discussion on that. Why not? Why not? It's a good thought.
What I want to ask is that consider a governing body at whatever level who have to take a decision for certain group of people. Now there is a chance that that decision is opposed by the people, and then I'm not deciding whether it is a good decision or a bad decision, but there is a chance that public might oppose it. And then there is also a chance that if we don't take a decision, we'll go into a delay in action or no action mode. So how do we decide? How do we differentiate between, how do we draw a line, and how can we take a decision for whether we want to take a decision or we don't?
It's a very good question. It's called, we all know, we learn. There's a Pavlovian learning that we have, conditioning. As and how we have individual conditioning of learning, we also have group learning. I mean, you can have conditioning for organizations where they go out and make some decisions that are criticized very badly, and they are conditioned. But according to me, if you have your ears on the ground, you have done your homework, your heart is on the right thing, you have your statistics right, you have your numbers right, what stops you from taking decisions? You ought to.
Sir, I'll give you an example. It is a very common example of that type of compulsory usage of helmets. It is there. It is a compulsory thing, but there is a lot of opposition from the public, and it is not actually implemented.
It's absolutely. There is a question of acceptance. There is a question of how is it being implemented. But I would also say that I have been witness to some accidents where if there was no helmet, there would be no gentleman. I mean I have seen accidents, people have survived because of the helmets. So it is for that one-off accident that a person can have, and that helmet can save his life.
So exactly over here, we know how useful the helmets are. We know that the decision is good, that to make it compulsory, then that would be for the betterment of people.
Is it compulsory in Baroda? Is it? Yes. So I'm sure it should be implemented that because I'll tell you about a city. I think I was studying in Nasik. Yes, and Delhi. Delhi, it's compulsory. There's no chance that you should be caught without a helmet. You are sure to be penalized. You are sure to be challaned. It has been implemented very, very strictly, and it has worked. There has to be some fear of implementation as well, and it's being penalized. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, when a mother has a son or a child, she knows that when the child will get an injection, it will pain. Right? But vaccination is good for the child. Not bad. There are going to be some decisions where you require a little bit of coercion.
Myself, Master Hemant Joshi from Medicine Faculty. Talking about electoral reform, how do you justify the presidential election? Because as a youth, we are reading in newspaper and we are very confused about it. That we cannot directly elect the.
It's an old system. India is the only country where we have made a mix. We have learned from America, we have learned from the British system and some other systems, and there is a lot of thought we need to have. That's what I'm saying. The constitution needs to be updated on a regular basis, and the constitution should be amended with the current spirit. So I think as you have started thinking about it, talking about it, there will be several people who will be starting to think about it. And I'm sure change would come after that. But to give a potent view on that, it's a long drawn subject. It's a very long drawn subject. So, may not be the right time for me to give a potent view on that. Thank you.
Being a student of political science, here I would like to take an opportunity to thank DDO sir for increasing our knowledge. And I'm sure students of other disciplines would have been influenced by this speech or presentation, and they might choose to study this social science ever in future.